Massive thank you to Quadlock, who are sponsoring this episode of Lakeside Drive. Tommy T, it's the last time, unfortunately, this year that we've got Quadlock sponsoring us, but we're very, very thankful to them for their brilliant cases and brilliant accessories, aren't we?
Yes. I love my Quadlock and I will continue to use it even after this.
Yeah, I think we'll still be promoting it to people. Even.
Yeah. I don't shut up about it. Everyone's sick of me sticking my phone to stuff.
Oh, it sticks to the coffee machine right in front. That is actually fantastic.
So handy.
That's staying there. If you want to protect your phone and support the show for the last time, head to the Quadlock link in the description in the show notes. And as always, a massive thank you to Quadlock for sponsoring this episode and the last couple since the Australian Grand Prix. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. Mercedes are back, and that is a bloody shame. G'day, my name is James. Welcome to the Australian opinion on Formula One here at the Lakeside Drive F1 podcast. In this episode, we review the Spanish Grand Prix. And I'm joined by my friend and yours, Tommy T. G'day, mate.
Oh, g'day, mate.
Don't even need to put that on, to be honest.
Nah, genuinely. What an absolute snooze fest that was.
I am disappointed that Mercedes have figured it out. Because, God, I wish they hadn't, because it was great to not have them anywhere near the front for such a long time, which is probably contrary to what we were saying about 5 weeks ago.
Yeah. I think if the title fight it's not going to be interesting, is it? But at least if there's competitive cars giving Max a run, maybe that becomes interesting, because right now he is just running away.
He is running away. He is Joey Dosick. That's a very niche reference to you if you've watched Wolfpack Live at Madison Square Garden anyway.
Wow. Literally maybe half a listener might get that.
Which is campy. Yeah. It is a shame. Let's talk more broadly though about the weekend. The broadness though I want to talk about is the removal of the chicane, the very last corner. Tommy T, good, bad, indifferent?
Don't care.
Don't care?
Don't care. I think passing we saw was a bit more achievable. Maybe that's a result of that. I think that was the plan, was that you could actually build up enough momentum and speed, follow closely through that last complex, whereas before you would just lose all of that momentum and have to then get back on the power. So, yeah, I think we saw that meant that you could make a pass on the pit straight a bit easier. So is that better for racing? It was still under DRS, so it's kind of on the edge. I don't know if DRS was turned off, if you would still be able to make those passes as easily. But it's what we want. We want to see overtaking, because traditionally this has been a tough kind of, there's like 2 locations where you can make passes because it is a test track, really.
Yes. Yeah, good point. Look, we did say Yawn Grand Prix. It is worth saying that there were a hell of a lot of overtakes. And specifically the battles I think that were most interesting were that Hulkenberg-Sonoda Joe battle, which just went on
for laps.
Yeah. Interesting though, TT, that this was probably the only time this year that we're going to see this 2 or 3 stop strategy. Yeah. Which is really interesting because, of course, it's Monaco 1 stop, or unless it's raining, in which case it did, and then you had to put a couple in. But the reality is being able to throw different tyres into the mix and use different compounds and going soft, like a couple of people did, Lance Stroll being one of them, before then putting on a different compound tyre, I think is an interesting way of doing the Grand Prix.
Which is why we've always said we'd like to see 2 stops, because the one is like, how long can I last before making my stop, regardless of compound? No one really cares. You could go from medium to soft. Sometimes you can go from hard to soft, hard to medium. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just, when do I do the stop? Whereas as soon as you put 2 in, there becomes an element of which compound do I want for which segment of the race. Whereas, like, it really doesn't matter otherwise in 1 stops. Like, we're seeing now that the tyre compounds and the cars are able to deal with the degradation quite well. Like, either we need to assign a riskier set of compounds for weekends to throw some kind of like spanners in that, or we need to go to mandatory 2 stops to kind of cause some strategic like battles and play. I think we saw that was more interesting. That was the only interesting thing about this Grand Prix, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it throws in jeopardy, to use your
I know,
word.
I was trying to avoid it.
How dare you? People playing the bingo card at the Lakeside Drive bingo card at home need you to say it.
Say it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you're right. We have been speaking about this for years in terms of mandatory 2-stop. We're also not the only people. people inside the paddock are sort of talking for it too. I mean, if we're doing sprint races and we're doing 5,000 races in the United States, I feel like it's worth at least having one race or a couple of races maybe through the year where that is a mandatory thing. Campy obviously not here, but let's, on his behalf, the FIA breaking at Ghosts with red flags coming out through qualifying.
Very quick, wasn't it?
Unbelievable.
It was gravel. They decided that it was gravel on the track, right? That was the call.
Allegedly.
Man, it was a quick red flag, wasn't it?
Jeez, especially because I think what was it? Valtteri got himself slightly beached.
It was about 3 different incidents all at the same time. So in their defense, like let's just read that.
Throw the flag.
Yeah.
I wrote ridiculous, bloody stewards. What I think is really interesting.
Careful, you'll be called into the FIA.
What I think is really interesting is that one of the storylines of the weekend was that Gunther Steiner was called into the steward's office for having a crack at the stewards. Who would have thought that having an opinion about anyone and being able to say it on a platform could be a bad thing? I think the stewards just need to focus on doing a bloody job properly. That would be nice.
Yeah.
And what I think is also interesting is I think Martin said this as well, that, you know, maybe it's not the decision that's made here, it's a decision that's made at Geneva. And I thought, I'd actually forgotten about the FIA support centre or whatever
Geneva
it is.
Convention?
The Geneva Convention of how to fire Michael Massey, a many page document. Anyway, it just, but I mean, it feels ridiculous to me that it was read so early. Gravel on track, again, this will be Campy's point of view if he was sitting here, breaking at Ghosts, ridiculous.
Yes.
All right. Let's go through a team-by-team analysis, TT, because there is a lot and then nothing to talk about simultaneously.
Yes, I know.
So we'll start at the very back of the pack. It's unfortunate. We can maybe talk more broadly about these teams as well as we go through, because we are getting towards the midpoint of the season, although it feels so disjointed to date that it still doesn't feel like it's got started yet, which is very interesting. But Haas, Nico Hülkenberg in 15th, Kevin Magnussen in 18th.
Yep.
Hulk was on it.
Yeah.
On it. But then he wasn't on it. And I just feel this year, Hülkenberg has the better of K-Mag.
For sure.
I think he's the faster driver in this car, right? But whatever happens during the latter part of the race, he can never quite maintain the pace or get it together like he should be able to do.
Yeah.
So is it a car thing or a strategy thing, do you think? Or both, maybe?
Maybe both. I think that car is better than it has been in past years, but it's still not where it needs to be or where they want it to be. I wonder if you're right. I wonder if he's spending all of his energy and stuff too early, and he's kind of maybe using all of the tyres life, and then he's suffering later in the race.
Yeah.
But again, in that car, is that the best strategy to do that? Because if something does happen, like a yellow flag, you can be opportunistic. And if you've already been having this aggressive strategy and you get a fortuitous yellow safety car, you can jump in and make that change. So I think it's the strategy that you should take with that car. Like and that team where they're positioned. Kind of like we used to talk about Williams years past. Take the risk. What's the worst you're going to do? Not score a point again? Like, you're already not scoring points. You might as well risk it and come 18th instead of 11th.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
Risk it for those points.
Interestingly now, because, well, we'll talk about Alfa Romeo in a bit, but Joe got 2 points this weekend. Haas and Alfa Romeo now on 8 championships points apiece, but Haas is still 7th in the championship. McLaren in 6th. On 17 points.
Disgusting, isn't it?
So there is a significant gap. What's interesting though is, I mean, at the moment this is a win for them.
Yeah,
right? They're getting back towards the mid part of the pack, so to speak, and obviously Gunther and Jean will be wanting to ensure that they are sort of around that 5th to 7th mark, because of course more points means more money, more prizes, and I mean less time in aero development. But it'd be interesting to see what happens, because I think the team is interestingly in a transitional point between we're just going to do the opposite to everyone else, which is what they did, as you say, for that Williams tactic, especially when they had the rookie drivers
just
in.
Risk it all.
Versus, okay, how can we actually play the longer game now? And even Martin said it on the broadcast, you know, a lot of these teams towards this end of the grid are reacting to each other. So if someone pits, they pit. It doesn't feel like they've got the ability to make an interesting strategy call that's going to pay off, because they're probably covering off each other, which is interesting. But it's a shame for me to be talking about them so far down the back of the pack, although they're not quite last though, because Williams in Logan Sargent was in 20th and Alex Albon in 16th. TT, I'm not sure if you've seen the photos out of Monaco of the underside of the car. Let me do that. This is great audio content. That's the underside of a Red Bull, right?
Yep.
It's very interesting.
Plank.
Many tunnels. Yeah. Everything else. This is the underside of a Williams. Yeah.
That looks like someone 3D printed something and hasn't removed all the bits yet. It's full. There's so much stuff there.
There's literally
it looks like the underside of a jet ski. There's no holes in it. That looks like it could retain water and be buoyant.
James Vowles saw the Daniel Ricciardo jet ski ad in Miami. Went, yeah, that'll do. There's literally nothing.
It looks like it would hold water.
It would float.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a little bit of work towards the front of the car, but listener, I mean, I posted this in the Discord if you want to go and check it out. But Engine Mode 11 on Twitter also posted it, which is where I saw it. So go have a look. The difference between the underside of the floor on what's going on a Mercedes and a Red Bull versus what's in a Williams. It's like they haven't even turned up for work.
Yeah.
The aerodynamicists for the underfloor part of the car, which I think then probably for Alex Albon highlights even more about his ability, does it not?
And why the hell is he getting blamed when how can that car have any grip? Because we know that you're not allowed to have as much downforce through the top kind of end of aero. It's all ground effect. That's not dragging. That's not vacuuming to the ground. No. That is just slipping around like the old cars that we've had. And now you're not allowed to use wings and front end kind of downforce. That's very impressive to see him doing as well as he is. I think this track is also not a great track for that Williams. This is not going to net good results, which is what we saw. But then I suppose if we look at a team point of view, I think Albon's doing excellent. Sargent is dragging the team down.
He's doing what we would assume a rookie would do this year. But in terms of rookies, I think it's very hard to ignore just how good Oscar Piastri is. Oh. Look, Williams, again, we talk about this very often. We want them to be better. James Vowles is the right person, in my opinion, to help them to get to that point, but it is a long-term game. It will be interesting to see next year the driver lineup. I doubt Sargent will find himself in. Maybe he will. I mean, it's probably too early to say. I mean, not for Campy. Campy already wants him in the bin, which is not surprising whatsoever. But we do like to see it. But again, those photos, I think, just goodness me, surely the aerodynamicists in Williams will probably take a look at those photos very closely of the Mercedes and the Red Bull from Monaco and go, maybe we should just do something just to see what happens.
Yeah.
They get most wind tunnel time because they were so far down the grid last year. And they've literally done nothing with it. They've just gone, that'll do.
I think they've just
jet ski.
Yeah, let's make a jet ski. That's not wind tunnel. That's water.
You've got a fluid dynamicist. You've forgotten that it's aero. Yes, very, very interesting. All right, let's talk about McLaren. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris. Brilliant qualifying by Lando Norris.
Yes,
really, really good.
Yep.
To put the track to where he did, phenomenal.
Yep.
Oscar, equally
so close.
Fantastic drive.
Yeah.
It's a shame he wasn't in the points this weekend. He finished in 13th.
Yep.
Lando Norris finished in 17th. But I don't think that was indicative of Lando's pace. Or, well, maybe it was indicative of his long-term pace because of what sort of happened with the rest of the grid. But certainly for the start, it's like he's forgotten how to start up the front.
Yeah.
Because it was a bit of a turn, lap one incident, racing incident, kind of got squeezed.
But he kind of backed out.
Lewis backed out because of a Ferrari of Carlos Sainz buggering around with Max.
But I agree with the commentators. I don't think Lando should have yielded that position. He had inside and could have shut Hamilton out, and he played nice and let him in.
Yeah.
He really could have been more aggressive off that start.
I wonder if he just was like, you know what? I'm going to protect my tyres. I'm not racing this dude.
But then he ended up in a worse position.
That's right. Oh. Yeah. And it's a shame. Look, curious on your thoughts on this because it was really hard to like Lando while DR was there. Really, really hard.
Yep.
But before, the car Lando, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris in that sort of 18-19 period was easier.
You bought merch.
I still got merch. A Lando hat, McLaren Lando hat and T-shirt.
So he must have been likable.
Yeah. He's, from an Australian point of view, obviously a teammate again, but the teammate is doing much better than Daniel did last year in Oscar Piastri. Not to say that they're, well, we love Daniel, so it's very hard for me to say that he wasn't having a good time, but he wasn't having a good time. Are we able, I suppose, to try and get back in more on a positive bandwagon with Lando, do you think?
I think so. I think we have also seen some uglier sides of his personality through the Netflix documentary and behind the scenes stuff where it's just like, oh, you present something very different when the cameras are on and you know they're on, as opposed to kind of just some kind of bratty behavior that we kind of assumed and felt like was coming through is actually kind of maybe how you are more often than not, which sucks because he is interesting. He can be a fun personality to camera and you'd like to see that happens. Whereas we look at Daniel and that is Daniel. He doesn't put it on for the camera really. Like he might turn it up, but that's him. He's a bit of an idiot and always like wants to have a joke.
Australians turning it up when the camera's on? Surely not.
But no, I think maybe there is some redemption for Lando, and I think maybe we look at the redemption of Max maybe from the Australian point of view and Seb, those kind of things. So in the heat of the moment, we can definitely, I don't know, direct that eye towards those like those other teammates. But we changed our tune on Seb after that incident. We changed our tune on Max, and we actually are excited for Max and Daniel to be back together because as soon as they were apart, we missed the content and we missed like that friendship they had. But at the time we were like, no, Max is the worst. Like he's detrimental to that team. He's not as good as Daniel. And I think, we can get very caught up, and maybe that's what's happened here with the Lando Daniel kind of over the last like 2 years.
Yeah, I like it. I think you're right. Certainly from the people who I have spoken to who work at McLaren, they think Lando's great. So, I mean, when you spend time with the guy, you can have a much better opinion of him than if you have a armchair podcast from the Mornington Peninsula. Oscar Piastri, though, TT, I mean, this is, out of all the three of the rookies, absolutely he's here to stay. Absolutely here to stay. Interestingly, out of Monaco, he put a brilliant pass around the outside, just going to Casino Square that F1 didn't show. And then he posted it on his social media. And he had to delete it because F1 were like, no, we want to post it, and then do a repost. But here is a guy who is driving a JCB tractor.
Yep.
And for his first season in Formula One, has a lot more confidence in the car than probably he should.
Yeah.
Which means one or two things. A, he's just naturally gifted. Or B, and it's probably both of these things to be fair, he's working really hard at back of the simulator and working.
Yep.
Trying to understand the car as best as he can, doing lots of homework, keeping his head down, bum up, so to speak, because we don't see a lot of Oscar Piastri external to a race weekend.
Yeah, no, he's quite out of the limelight, isn't he? He's very just kind of in the shadows, working hard, just putting in good performances. But it's been a while since we've seen a rookie have this kind of impact and be as close to their teammate who we think is quite brilliant. Like the comparison is, it's pretty much like the best rookie we've seen since maybe Leclerc. Yeah, that's where my head went. Like,
same page.
But like we haven't really seen all of the rookies we've had since then have kind of been like, we're trying for them to be good. We're wanting them to be better than they are, and it just hasn't been. Whereas I think it's very clear that Oscar is supposed to be in Formula One and has a bright future. And
especially considering he spent a year out.
Yeah, I know. A year on the bench to jump in and do as well as he's doing. It's
great. It's exciting. But I don't think we get behind him enough from our point of view, but also just more generally, probably because he's not the character of Daniel.
As well.
McLaren and a whole range of things. Let's talk about AlphaTauri because Yuki Tsunoda ended up with a 5-place grid penalty, which punted him out of the points down into 12th. But he had a very, apart from squeezing Joe and anyway,
tough day.
The stewards have decided, so there's nothing you can do about it. But Yuki Tsunoda is absolutely driving the wheels off this car and extracting every single ounce of pace possible from that AlphaTauri. His teammate Nick De Vries had a couple of spins in qualifying, finished in 14th. Now, let's talk about Nick actually before we talk more about Yuki, because we know that he was given a 3-race stay of execution by Helmut Marko. One of those races didn't happen. So now that it was a 2-race, probably does Canada count now as the third? I imagine maybe it would. So is this performance, was Monaco's performance enough, do you think, for him to have a reasonable conversation with the Red Bull wider family to say, at least give me to the end of the year to show me my skills shine through? Or do we actually think that there will be a mid-season replacement in the likes of a Red Bull junior like Liam Lawson? I don't think Daniel Ricciardo will go. So probably Liam Lawson, if anyone. Or do we just keep it there? Because we know what Red Bull has been like historically with
willing to make
drivers.
changes. Yeah, I don't think he's shown enough, honestly. But then is the driver coming in good enough to warrant an opportunity? I think in the past you could say yes. Like the mid-season changes have made sense because the driver is actually that talented and been someone who should be on the grid or was formerly on the grid. So I think if the swap was to Daniel, yes, but I don't think it should be Daniel. Like I think we both agree there that that's not the right decision for either party to do that. But I don't know, is Lawson good enough for that seat like we've seen in the past when we've made those mid-season Red Bull changes? And that was to the Red Bull team from from another team, not like a fresh rookie driver. So maybe that's something to consider as well. But I don't think De Vries has shown enough regardless. I think this will be his final season, unfortunately. I don't see anyone else taking a punt when there's so many other drivers out there that are veterans, let alone like the young crop, which is like limited, yes, but why would you take someone who's as old as De Vries, unfortunately? Like he's not young for a rookie.
Yeah.
He's quite old and doesn't have a lot left. You would think the upside's just lower for someone of his like limited skill set and experience.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because his debut in Formula One, Williams, points, Monza.
Yeah.
I mean, the stars really aligned for that.
That was incredible.
That track.
Yeah.
Him behind the wheel and just having the confidence.
Yep.
So there is something to be said, I think, although the regulations have changed slightly for this year, there is something to be said for maybe just how complicated this AlphaTauri is to drive for him versus someone like Yuki. I mean, they have been pretty much the worst car on the grid all year. They're only ninth. They've got 2 points ahead of Williams, who've got 1 championship point.
Yeah.
So...
And that's with Yuki having bad luck and like driving really well.
And those 2 points again are Yuki Tsunoda's points. That, Nick hasn't got points yet. Same with reality. That Logan Sargent did show some early promise in that Williams wasn't able to convert. Now I'm interested though. Yuki Tsunoda, we sort of interesting with Franz Tost, who's leaving at the end of this year.
Yeah.
He said a couple of weeks ago that he thinks Yuki's ready for the big team. So. Do we think to wargame this out if because of Sergio Perez's now form of not performing, that's a couple of qualifiers now he's stuffed. And the pressure is only going to get bigger and bigger. And there is absolutely zero chance that he is winning this world championship, which means it's when Max wins, not if Max wins.
Totally,
it would be a very interesting conversation, I think, to say, well, Yuki Tsunoda, working exceptionally hard, driving exceptionally well, at the best of his career, according to everyone who's working with him. Do you give him a shot there? Or, we didn't speak about this last time. In fact, I don't think we, you weren't even on the podcast, but Honda announcing Aston Martin. Do we see him go over to take...
become the star
Alonso's
of that team. Yeah, eventually.
I don't think Lance is going anywhere. That Honda deal, I mean, he is a Honda driver. The only reason why he's there because his F2 career was good but not great. Not in the same way that Oscar Piastri's was. So
yeah, definitely.
Interesting, isn't it? Where do you think, though, he's at as a driver? Do you think he would be someone that other teams would be interested in putting on the grid if he lost his seat, for example, at AlphaTauri?
I think so. I think he's shown enough. I think he's matured to the point. I think his consistency is much better as well. His lows are much less low. I think, I'm very impressed with how he's handling the season, and it's almost like he needed that motivation of, all right, you're not the baby driver anymore. Like, yes, he's younger, but he's way more experienced than De Vries. You're now in charge of this team, and he's taken that in his stride and done really well. He has performed. He's done the best he can with that car, which has plummeted from its last year kind of position within the grid. It's easily the worst car, I think, at the moment. It's terrible, which is odd because when the top team is so good, it's clear that they're not really passing that down like they have in the past. That is a massive disconnect. I'm very impressed. I think you make a good point about Honda. I don't know who else or where he would fit stylistically, like who kind of is looking for that kind of driver. I don't think it's going to be an Alpine, for instance. I don't think that personality matches with the audience that they're going for, so that's probably not a decision they're going to make. Maybe it's Maybe it is America. Maybe it is like the Haas team if they're looking and they kind of put some stuff together. I don't know. I think his personality, everyone loves. Everyone loves Yuki. And he's going to have global appeal, kind of like we've seen with Albon as well. People underestimate like how much those communities really appreciate being represented. So I think, he's got a future in Formula One. I think for at least like another half decade, I can see him around. Where that is, I'm unsure.
Let's keep going. We'll talk about Alfa Romeo now. This was a tale of two completely different fortunes. Joe getting 2 points in ninth, which was great for him. Valtteri in 19th. Now, it is
he pitted on like lap 2 or something there, right? Like it was
close to a 5-stop race. It is becoming harder and harder to watch.
Yep.
And it's not through a lack of skill.
No.
Right? It is a series of bad luck.
Yep.
Of missed strategy calls, of incidents around or whatever else.
Yeah.
However, I don't like doing what I did last year, which was defending Daniel all the time. I don't want to start defending Valtteri again.
Yep.
Do you think this isn't really doing much for his stocks?
Nothing at all.
He came out of Mercedes and obviously
could command kind of a decent seat.
And we knew that he had to move for George, not because of a lack of pace for him, but because if Mercedes didn't do it, someone else would have taken George
Exactly.
Russell. It was a hard position to be in. But of all of the seat options that he had, which were two, Alfa Romeo or Williams, Alfa Romeo, Sauber, effectively, and what the future is of Sauber is probably a lot more promising for him.
Yeah.
But
can you get there?
Is he doing enough to stay? Because at this point in time, Joe looks to be the one that has consistently finished higher and performed better on paper.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to talk about, isn't it?
And I think it's like worth noting that Joe has been excellent. Like definite improvement. Consistency is up, like you've said. So I think it's column A, column B. I think Valtteri is getting very unlucky and things are not going his way. But then simultaneously, Joe is really stepping up and improving. So I don't know. Valtteri's going to have to figure out what he wants to do. Does he want to just be in Formula One, or does he want to get back to something more competitive and be in a position to win races again? Because the performance this year, I would say, is he's going to be a seat filler, kind of based on this kind of performance and results, as opposed to someone who's commanding points and like challenging for podiums in the future, which sucks to say because we both love Valtteri and know that he's capable of that. But no one's going to take a chance on someone with this kind of season. It's just not going to happen.
It's a big shame, and we want to see this come back, I think. And also because Alfa Romeo more generally last year did quite well. Yep. This year, they're just not there. They're just not there. Yep. And it's frustrating because the reality is, to talk about the Daniel Ricciardo thing, the reality is I think DR's best opportunity to get back towards the front of the grid, although Sergio's not necessarily performing in the last two races, it's a very big ask to see what's going to happen in Max's team, and maybe Max is already having those kinds of conversations. Yeah. And maybe Christian Horner is already starting to have those conversations. We know what he's like.
Oh, yeah.
We know what he's like.
We know what he wants, yeah.
Sauber seems to be the best because Works team, Audi, it's not far away, 2026.
Yep.
You know, DR will be 35 going into the season, 36 mid-year. And we look at what Lewis Hamilton's doing. We look at what Fernando Alonso is doing.
Yes.
There's still some time there
to
be able to...
and willing to put the work in.
Right. Yeah. Makes it very difficult.
Definitely.
All right, we're going to take a break, listener. We'll be back very shortly to continue our team-by-team analysis. And we are back. Thank you for listening to those ads. It makes us, it helps us keep the lights on. That's for sure. Let's keep going, TT. We'll talk about Alpine now. Gasly in 10th, Ocon in 8th. Now, firstly, Laurent Rossi is an absolute, insert very nasty word here, because
lunatic.
After bloody hanging out Otmar to dry, couple of weeks before Monaco. Monaco happens. Esteban Ocon gets on the podium.
Yeah.
And in the celebration photo, he's standing between the two drivers, blocking Otmar from the cameras. What an absolute squid.
Yeah.
To use a campyism.
Yeah. It just highlights the stuff about F1 I don't like, which is the front runnery kind of like, I want the credit, I want the fame, I want that stuff. Like you have quite literally nothing to do with any of the success on track. That is down to so many other people, yet you're the one that needs to be front and center for those. I really don't respond well to those kind of people and that kind of energy. I think it's very bizarre, but that is the sport. That is the sport though, unfortunately.
You're right.
Like it is, and that's something that we're reckoning with all the time, I think, as we go to Vegas and Miami and kind of we chase these, I don't know, veneered like fake cities, which just like a glitz and glam for the sake of it rather than the actual sport, which we love. It's it was very apparent, wasn't it? That was his position there, is like, I like to own this and run this because it looks good and it's fun, and like you're not actually moving the needle or making a difference.
Yeah, Matt Walker on the Discord pointed this out, and we share the absolute disgust about it because it's just not how you do leadership.
No,
not at all. And I think Otmar left Aston Martin, Racing Point Aston Martin, feeling pretty put out for what was going on there.
Yeah.
I would argue he would be feeling very similar.
When you even wonder worse, like, because you can give Stroll as much as you want, but like there has to be some leadership, I think, as toxic and whatever his leadership style is, but there's some kind of like, at least he's doing things, he's around and stuff. It sounds like Rossi just like floats and just like swans in. It doesn't sound like there's actually any leadership. It's just token kind of like, I'm in charge, therefore listen.
Yeah, it's no good. I don't like it at all. Do not like it. Drivers wise though, Gasly and Ocon, they're getting some points back on the table.
Yeah.
The car is coming back a little bit. They're now 5th in the Constructors' Championship on 40 championship points, ahead of McLaren, who are on 17. That was the closest battle that was going on the grid. Now Alpine are behind Ferrari, who are on 100 points, who are in 4th.
Do you think that the car is better or the drivers are dragging that car forward?
Do you know what? It's a great question because it is not the kind of Alpine that we've seen. And what Rossi said isn't incorrect. You just don't say that externally.
No.
You keep that in-house.
Yeah, and to specific people who can use that information.
Yeah. They know that they're not doing enough.
Right.
They really did. But I would say that what's going on is the driver's probably dragging that car forward. Esteban Ocon's qualifying lap in Monaco was
outstanding.
Divine, honestly, to watch. Considering that machinery is not on par with
what
it's Red Bull with.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Aston Martin for that matter.
Heroic lap.
It was great. So I think there are glimpses probably where the car is going well. We don't talk about the upgrades that are brought. In fact, I don't hear anything about the upgrades that are brought for other teams apart from the obvious ones. And I think for Alpine, of course, they'd be working exceptionally hard all the time to try and work it out. Again, they're a manufacturer team. A total package is theirs. There's no other Renault power units on the grid, so they have everything to work with within their own walls and factory. So it should be that they start to take some steps forward.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, the lowest when it comes to a works team at the moment, which is not really surprising when you've got Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari in the mix. But the Aston Martin, Mercedes part, I think, is also the interesting one that is third currently on 134 championship points.
Yeah.
Ocon and Gasly, though, I think the team more broadly just feels like it hasn't existed for a little bit.
I know.
And they've been sorting out their stuff internally because Gasly, we don't see like the kind of content. And look, Red Bull content pool and, a huge amount of stuff. Alpine, not so much. So what do you think the relationship, though, is like there?
I don't know because I feel like Ocon's an odd unit. I think Gasly's kind of sneaky, interesting and cool. I think he's quite... I don't know, underrated in that, but just likes to keep to himself. Ocon, I think, is just a weirdo. I think he's just an oddball that is just very good at racing and just like is a racing nerd almost. I don't know. It'd be a very interesting dynamic because that team's gone through a few changes. So you kind of go back to like Sainz, to Ricciardo, Hulk leaving, to Alonso. They're all such different energies. And now you've got this kind of almost, I would say, passive kind of people. You don't really have like a boisterous kind of over the top alpha leader type there. It's kind of Otmar, I would say, is the alpha out of anyone in those personalities. Well, other than Rossi, which is probably the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be your charismatic leader. You want someone. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be a very interesting place to work when you look back and say that the last 5 years of what Renault Alpine was.
Look, they're able to get podiums.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that needs to continue as other teams being able to have a shot. So it'll be interesting to me to see what Gasly can do, because now that Ocon's had his podium, Gasly will be very hungry to prove that he's the better driver out of the two of them.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Aston Martin now, because this is unfortunately a little bit further down the pack of where I was thinking. And unfortunately, Fernando Alonso could have won in Monaco if they put him onto the Inter straight away, because he would have been able to get out in front of Max Verstappen and kept him behind. And unfortunately, I'm not sure the pace in this car is now as strong as other teams like Mercedes. But let's talk about teammate Fernando Alonso, who at the very end of the race, he came in 7th. Lance Stroll came in 6th. At the very end of the race, he came onto the radio and said, "Tell Lance not to worry. Tell him not to worry. I will get into his DRS, but that is to keep the cars behind at bay. I will not overtake. Everything is fine." Who in the hell is this person? I don't understand. It's absolutely the Daddy Stroll effect.
Yeah.
I get it. But what a thing to say on the radio.
He's also I think he's got the perspective now, and he's zoomed out and gone, what is it, 2 points extra for that position? I don't even think, maybe 1 point at that. Like, really? Am I going to do that to cause more chaos and just put the spotlight on us as a team? All these kind of things. I think we've seen that he's very capable of thinking while driving a car very fast. The fact that he was telling stewards during qualifying, was it for that, impeding how many grid place drops that was going to be, is just peak Alonso content. So
true.
He's zooming out. He's looking at the whole picture and going, it's a point. I'm up on my teammate anyway. Let's just have this win. Let's keep Stroll happy. He kind of can have this as a win. I'll gift it to him. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. I think he's just playing the very, very long game, which is he wants to vie for that championship battle, which obviously he's not going to be able to do to the extent of like beating Max, but he has a great opportunity to becoming like second or third if things go right.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I think you're right. I mean, there's a handful of points between those two positions, but the difference is he's either going to get it or Lance is going to get it. So the reality is them to work together, as you say. The zooming out is phenomenal from this bloke. If they were able to secure second or third in the championships, more likely probably going to be third now with Mercedes doing what they've done. More money, more points, more prizes. A better car for next year.
Exactly.
So there is an interest, I think, for him to keep it going. And there is no turning this guy off. I think Martin was saying that the metabolic age, according to his trainer, is like 31, not 41. So 10
Doesn't
years
surprise
younger.
me. Yeah.
The guy's going to be here for quite some time.
He looks in better nick than me, that's for sure.
100% than all of us.
Yeah.
All of us put together, that is absolutely for sure. And Lance Stroll, didn't really see a lot of him, but finished in 6th.
Great start.
Had a great start.
Yeah. That's one thing he can do occasionally, is have a ripping start, be opportunistic. Sometimes it doesn't end well, but he actually has that ability to navigate, and that's what we pinged Lando for this week, was being passive and timid. Lance was not. He got two into, I think, the 4th corner. He had already taken up 2 places. Like, that's really aggressive, and that's what you love to see.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And especially after last week's poor showing, he needed to come back and say, no, I still think I somewhat deserve a seat on the grid. Let's talk about Ferrari now. TT, Carlos Sainz in 5th. Charles Leclerc having the worst time. He finished in 11th. At this point, not sure what happened with the car. They changed a whole bunch of parts, which meant he started behind Logan Sargent in the pit lane. Really bizarre. And he is just not a happy boy. So the question is, when does he leave?
It's a rite of passage, right? To get to Ferrari, be promised the world, and then be bitterly disappointed and leave. So he could be one of the greats. He's on trajectory for being one of our greats, because that's what happens to all of them.
Oh, so good.
I don't know where he goes or when he goes, but I can't imagine it going more than like the end of this season and another season maybe, because those, like Campy says, those contracts are useless. Like, we can break them very easily. But where? because he has to go somewhere competitive. So right now he's in a top 3 car. It's going to have to be one of those other 2.
Yep.
Which seat is available? And which, can you imagine him going and being a teammate with Max? I don't know if I can see it. Like, it would be brilliant. I would love to see it, but I can't imagine him taking the hit to be, or would Max allow it?
Well,
is
that's
the other part.
question.
Does Max have the veto rights there? Because you'd argue going into a 3-time world champion, Max maybe does have the right to go get stuffed. I get to pick my teammate. Like, it's my team. I built this. We're 3-time world champions with me because of me, which is what he's going to say. So
100%.
It's very interesting.
I think he probably he'd be eyeing off what Lewis Hamilton's doing right now.
Yeah.
Because whilst Lando Norris has been spoken about quite a lot, but that's because he's a Brit and the Brits are talking about it.
Yep.
The reality is, I think if you put the 2 drivers in the same car in terms of Daniel Ricciardo and Charles Leclerc in a Red Bull, I think Daniel's going to drive it better.
Yeah.
And that's because he's driven it before, and that's obviously a slight bias on my part from there too. But I have said before that they're both in the top 5 drivers on the grid.
Yep.
So does Max want that epic competition, the Rosberg-Hamilton sort of era Mercedes? I don't think so.
I don't think he does.
He would probably want Daniel to come in,
because Daniel pushes him in the right ways.
100%.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Charles would love to get around a team.
Would aggravate and
And I think Toto Wolff would secretly love to have that if
Exactly.
and when Lewis departs.
Well, if they're stealing points from each other, meanwhile Lewis can go off and just capture all the other points. You know what I mean? If you're having battles and spinning out and doing all these things with your teammate and fighting each other for points all the time, you can win the constructors, but maybe you don't win the drivers, which is what Lewis wants. And ultimately what Mercedes wants, I think. They don't care.
100%.
They want Lewis to get his championship.
But I think Ferrari, from going back to Ferrari, it's an interesting place for both of these drivers to be because, as you say, it's a top 3 team. Well, it's not. It's a top 4 team at this point.
I know.
And they're 34 points behind Aston Martin.
Mm.
The reality is the likelihood of a driver championship or a constructors championship is not here. Not anytime soon.
Not in this generation.
We're getting older. And there's newer, younger drivers. Also, Piastri is a perfect example coming in. They're not the hot, young thing that they used to be. And I think for them, they're going to really start to question their ability to be able to do anything well. And now, money is one thing, but also prestige is another. And being part of Ferrari, I'm sure, is a very prestigious and it feels really good. But to me, both of these drivers are getting more and more fed up every race weekend. Like, you can hear it.
Well, Sainz questioning the call to come in for tyres when it did. He was like, it ended up being the right call to undercut. I know. But you can understand the hesitation in his voice. Was like, are we sure? Like, why are we doing this? He did it, but they don't have the trust. Whereas, like, we can hear other people, like Max is told to pit. Max pits because he knows that his team has his best interests and they're always going to do what they can. There's no agendas. There's no layers of bureaucracy and finagling. I don't know. They just don't do that stuff. Whereas it feels like Ferrari, it's always like, is this even for winning races or is it because some political choice? Who's making the decision and why?
It's very bizarre. We want to see Ferrari back towards the front, but they're making decisions that just confuse us.
Can we just acknowledge how long it's been since Ferrari has been competitive and actually won anything?
Yeah, well,
it's a long time.
And even when they were on track to win something, which was brand new era of Formula One, Charles had a great couple of first races, and then boom.
Was it Kimi was the last?
Kimi was the last world champion, yeah.
How long ago was that?
Championship since, I think.
Yeah.
2007.
It's a long time ago. Yeah.
It's
for us to keep talking about them the way we do.
I was in year 12.
Yeah.
I'm no longer in year 12. Let's keep going. Let's talk about Mercedes because George Russell and Lewis Hamilton both on the podium. Geez, we haven't seen a Mercedes double podium for quite some time. And the reason is side pods.
Wow.
Imagine that. Imagine having some side pods and suddenly the car does what you want it to do.
Yep.
It's not, I mean, obviously we're not aerodynamicists or engineers, but
it's just comical,
it's hard
isn't it?
to not put, like stop flogging a dead horse when it comes to that kind of stuff.
The stubbornness of Mercedes is admirable, but dumb.
But I think, we obviously the car had these upgrades last week.
Yes.
But Monaco is not a track to show that.
Not at all.
Not in the way that Imola would have been. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, absolutely nowhere near the pace of Max Verstappen. Not even bloody close.
Nope.
But in terms of this battle with Aston Martin,
yeah,
it seems
very
Mercedes,
interesting.
at least at this track, bit of an upper hand.
Mm-hmm. And I think it even surprised the Mercedes drivers. They were kind of expecting, they talked about it in the commentary, I think it was quite good, that they kind of expected to be in battles with certain people and certain positions. And they were like, the tire degradation is really good. I've actually got way more pace. We might need to change that viewpoint and we can actually compete now. We're not just looking for 5th and 6th. We're looking for podium. Like let's change that strategy completely, throw it out. So again, cooler track. So that's worth acknowledging that as soon as it gets hot, those Mercedes tires, they're going to be useless on their tires. I mean, the degradation will be high. So here though, perfect opportunity for them to make those strides. Good to see Lewis back with that competitive opportunity, like running in second. Like he was nowhere near, and it was almost because they realized too late and their qualifying wasn't as good as maybe they'd hoped. But if Lewis had started in second, maybe we would have seen a very different version of Max having to race, Lewis having to race. Like you don't know. Like Max was in the clear within like 2 laps, so he never had a battle. Whereas if Hamilton stuck with him for the first 5 laps or something, maybe there's a mistake, maybe there's more degradation. There's all these kind of things that you miss about having that closer competitor, because Sainz was never going to be that today. He gave a battle going to the first turn and then it was done.
Now, interestingly, these two collided over the race weekend, and George I just don't understand what was going on there.
Yeah. Tried to blame everyone else under the sun, didn't he?
Mercedes are very good at crashing into each other at this track.
Yeah.
They're very, very good at it. If you're good at something, be consistent, I suppose. But it was such an odd thing, and Lewis was like, it was very dangerous. Wasn't a lot of anger. Clearly a mistake. It wasn't on purpose. You wouldn't do that kind of stuff on purpose. But it's interesting, isn't it, just how balanced Lewis is now. He would be a lot more upset, I would have thought, probably, even with Valtteri, when the championship was on the line.
Exactly. I think that's the point. When the championship's on the table. When there's meat on the table. Yeah, I think you're right. But odd. And then, I think the onus is always on you, sorry, George. Like, it's your mirrors, it's your car.
Yeah.
When someone's in your slipstream, usually you're aware of it. I don't think that's on the team to let you know that your teammate who was trying to get a slipstream off you is behind you. Odd.
Very odd.
Especially going into his fast lap. Yeah. Like Lewis was about to start a fast lap. You were finishing.
Very odd.
You weirdo.
But upgrades, Mercedes. It seems to have worked. Now, whether or not it's track specific, temperature specific, obviously not quite as warm as we've seen.
Yep.
And the threat of rain that never came, which was very annoying because that would have been quite a bit of fun towards the very end.
Threat of rain that never came.
Yeah.
You can turn a phrase.
Thank you. I will absolutely not start a rap battle career. That's it. I've run out of ideas already. I haven't even started yet. But it's good and it's bad because I don't want Mercedes to come second in the Constructors' Championship. I want Aston Martin to, so Fernando can be better set up for next year. Anyway, Mercedes are doing things, and it's interesting to hear Toto Wolff's voice on the radio again. Because we have not heard Mr. Wolff for quite some time.
Did you happen to catch Rosberg at the end of the race trying to give all the credit to Toto, and Toto going, "You're an idiot. It's not me. There's so many people making decisions. Why would it be he's a weirdo, Rosberg, isn't he?
My favorite thing to do is not watch him on the broadcast.
Oh, it's really hard to watch.
Yeah.
I can understand why you don't.
Yeah. Anyway, Sky F1, hey. Well, let's finish up this episode talking about
to press Red
Bull. How many products have they got now? If you press red, you can do about 14 different things, but only if you're part of the 70 different types of glass or Q or sky or ceiling or, the glass. press red if you've got a glass ceiling. Tell you what, I cannot stand it. Fox Sports, please can you start doing it? Send the 4 of us 2 races. We'll do it for you.
Done.
Whatever you're paying Sky F1 for the broadcast
rights, do $1 less.
We'll do it for 10% less. We just need a fresh beanie, 24 fresh beanies, please. Yes. That's the only requirement. But seriously, can we invest in local talent, please? Man. That goes for America and Canada as well. Come on. Yep. The sport is big enough now that we don't all have to have Sky
completely
F1.
Agree.
Red Bull. Max Verstappen in the distance. See you later. Driving off into the summer. First Cool. Sergio Perez, 4th. Interesting. Terrible qualifying.
Horrible.
Is he so under pressure now, do you think, that he's going to really struggle to come back? Or if he does come back, do we get to say, well, actually, it was that wasn't a bad return to form, Sergio?
You can see him getting into his own head and forcing things and making these mistakes, which is so odd because when it's a street circuit, he's brilliant, which is arguably higher risk. So when he gets to these tracks where Max shines, Max is so good on a dedicated racetrack. He's unbelievable because he's been doing it his whole life and he's very comfortable there. Checo doesn't. He seems to struggle with it, and I don't know why. He seems to force everything and try and push the car way too hard, and that's why he has these incidents rather than driving through like a comfortable position of pushing. I don't know. He's always on the edge and goes too far. But does that now get harder because he's done it 2 weeks now in a row? Does the next one now go, better not stuff up, and then that's in your head? And it'd be interesting to get Freya's thoughts on this, actually, as someone who can psychoanalyze at least better than us as to what that mindset.
We'll give it a shot.
Exactly. But to get that kind of analysis on like, okay, what mental state do you have to be in now? Because he would be feeling the pressure. You're in the best car. You should be getting minimum second every week. You should be on the front row every qualifying.
Easy.
There's no excuses. So as soon as you're not doing that, people start asking questions. You've got people like Helmut Marko. You've got people like Daniel Ricciardo knocking on the door going, I'm ready. That's a lot of things to deal with. And I think that is starting to get to him maybe.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But he is in the fastest car on the grid. He absolutely isn't as fast as Max Verstappen, but and again, Martin said this on the broadcast, he needs to be in second every time, or in first if something happens to Max.
Exactly.
We've said it. Campy's said it heaps of times. So it'd be very interesting to see in the next couple of races. Of course, we've got Canada coming up next, and then Austria, and then Great Britain. So it'll be very interesting to see what he can do. That is our team-by-team analysis done and dusted. Let's, look, we're going to move straight to fantasy because Discord had a conniption and didn't work last night. If you're on the Discord, you'll know that about the same, you would have seen people typing the same message about 17 times. It came up on notification. So that was good. Not sure what happened there. Obviously, we can't control that. So that's one thing. But let's do our fantasy team name competition. Fantasy. Yes, that sting. Also hilarious in every single way. Well, out of 123 of you, we are trying to get to 500. So please, if you know someone or if you're listening and you haven't yet joined the fantasy competition, do so because it is hilarious for me to be able to go through all of these names. And of course, coffee and merchandise are up for grabs for prizes at the end of the year. The good news, Tommy T, is Campy is still not first. He's third overall.
That's pretty good though.
I'm 14th and you're 57th.
Well done, me.
Well done, you. Right in the middle. Which is great.
Perfectly average.
And a couple of you updated your team names before I read them this morning. This is obviously Matt Walker, which is a crossover between Box of Neutrals and here. Matt's Box of LSD Team 774. And if you listen to Box of Neutrals, you'll understand the 774 reference. If you don't, well, I'm not going to tell you because it's ABC Radio. That's what it is. Bath Alone Piastri Bravas Stroll Stock Dump. Yes, he did. Gon Chante, because DR dropped some merch. Yeah. Apparently it was very good and everyone wanted to buy some teacups. Had Kristen Bell.
Yeah, I saw.
Kirsten Bell. Who is it? Is it Kirsten Bell?
I think it's Kristen.
Oh, who knows? I'm up with the kids. But that's the whole friendship I think is fantastic. And she did this brilliant performance for the ad.
Yeah.
And the page of the credits was like 30 seconds worth of credits.
I know.
Which is
proper Daniel invested. Just branching out into many, many different things.
Anyway, Helmut Marko's prophecies. Yes, that'll be interesting to see what happens. A pain in the rain for Spain. Where I will start my next rap battle.
Yeah.
But that's it for this episode. A massive thank you to you for listening and for supporting the show by either subscribing and leaving a rating or review. Of course, there's about 10 billion Formula One podcasts out there.
Yeah.
We appreciate that you enjoy listening to this. We will start getting back to more content during race weeks. Our apologies. Things have changed on our side personally, so it's a lot harder to get in front of the mic, especially for me. But if you're going to the British Grand Prix, so am I. So if jump into the Discord, we might try and arrange a catch-up somewhere, either in London or near the circuit.
Good luck near the circuit.
Driving near the circuit will be really bad, very bad time. But we appreciate all of you. We especially appreciate patrons on Patreon. If you want to support the show, advertising is a part of that. We are now sponsorless as a result. The Quadlock's the last sponsor. We don't have any sponsors at the moment. So if you want to support the show, help us do this kind of content, do more content, range catch-ups and the rest of it, please consider going on to our Patreon. The link is in the description below. TT, massive thank you to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it was a little bit of a boring race, but we are going to Canada very, very soon, and we do like the Canadian Grand Prix. We will preview the Canadian Grand Prix next week, so make sure you stay tuned. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you soon. But at least Campy stayed home. At least he had the foresight to think,
COVID.
Maybe the boys don't want COVID if that's what I've got. And I will stay home.
I know.
He's a new man.
Does he believe in it? Has he changed his mind?